Do you have a product you'd like to bring to the world? Our guest is a seasoned product leader and a 2 times tech startup founder, and she believes product innovation has the ability to transform the world. It's Tech Tuesday on the Startup Life Show. Woohoo! Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Startup Life Live Show. I'm your host, Ande, Lyons, startup coach to first-time founders. Wrong button. And after raising 4 businesses of my own, I now help newly minted founders sleep through the night by giving them peace of mind. Because you know what? A new business, it doesn't come with instructions. How are you supposed to know what to do at all the different stages and phases of your startup? So that's why I love to coach first-time founders, especially. For those of you who are tuning in live, thank you so much for carving out time for you and your business, upping your founder game, while at the same time cheering on another founder. We're so thrilled that you're here and joining us today. And I can't wait to introduce you to our guest, as a wonderful woman. I met her during Techstars Startup Weekend. We were mentors for the process, and they did this wonderful video chat where you could meet people and connect. And I was like, oh my gosh, you are amazing, Adriana. So I want to dive right into her background, and then we'll bring her in. Okay, so a seasoned startup founder and product developer. Here she is right here. Oh my gosh, so much fun. Adriana is passionate about product management, product UX design, and the transformations that occur at the intersection of art, business, people, and technology. And for more than 2 decades, Adriana has helped create digital products on a variety of platforms and technologies for early stage startups and Fortune 500 companies. And today, Adriana is focused on helping startups and SMBs accelerate their growth by implementing the Fearless Product Strategy, a strategy framework guided by Authentic and Audacious Experiments. All right, folks, it's time. We're going to give a big round of applause, right, and a hearty welcome to Adrianna T. Torresan.
Hello.
Oh, thank you so much for joining me on the Startup Life Live Show, Adriana.
Thank you so much for this incredible welcoming introduction. I'm flattered.
I was so excited. I played the opening number twice because I was just like, I just can't wait to get going on this conversation. Where are you hailing from?
I'm in Los Angeles.
Okay, so LA.
Right now. Yes.
Great. And of course, I'm from Boston. Those of you tuning in, let us know in the comment threads. Where are you hailing from? We are live streaming across many platforms right now, thanks to the StreamYard live stream platform. We're on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Periscope, and actually Twitch too, because why not Twitch, right? And so I find that this is a great opportunity, Adriana, for folks to connect with each other. You know, not only learn something wonderful from you, but also share their business card, right? You know, their LinkedIn URL in the comment threads. And for those of you who are founders, please put the name of your business and the URL into the comment threads, and I'll pull it right up on the screen. I love to promote other businesses, and I know Adriana would love to learn more about you and what you're doing in the world as well.
Absolutely.
And so I spoke initially in the beginning there about how you and I met, you know, being mentors for Techstars Startup Weekend. I mean, that was a ton of fun. We saw, I mean, they were trying to do a lot in that, weren't they?
Yeah, it was a few days only. Yeah, I've mentored at Techstar a few times before, and it's always fascinating to see the fresh ideas and what you can do, but how fast they move.
Right. Yeah. And these companies were specifically solving COVID-19 problems because this was back in April.
Yeah.
But, you know, I know enough from working with founders and through my monthly pitch event that I co-host here in Boston that product development is so important, and it can really tank a company if not done right, a startup, and it can also not illuminate. I mean, if you're not doing it right, you're not going to understand what the customers want. So I'm excited to dive into your background and your understanding of product development and your experience from doing it with startups as well as Fortune 500s. And so, but first, founder journeys are amazing. And I'd love to know what, Adriana, compelled you to leave that nice paycheck, that automatic deposit that would come in every month, and all those other things that feel like certainty and guarantees. Yes. What prompted you to become a founder?
Yeah, thank you for that question. There are several reasons that I could list as the reason why I decided to start my own, my first startup. But the main one is I was just tired of working for corporate America and working on those huge products and huge projects with big budgets that sometimes, because they are so well resourced, they are no longer serving the market. They are doing because they believe will bring will help the business grow and will help with engagement and so on. But yeah, I think that was one of the reasons. I was working with products for over 15 years at that point.
Yeah, and we all know, folks, that as a company starts to mature, you scale and it's very exciting, but then you start putting in systems and procedures. And then you start hiring people who are really good at managing and leading systems and procedures. And then all of a sudden, innovation goes out the window because you're not on that shoestring budget anymore.
Absolutely.
You've got people, you're not just talking to your dog or your plants anymore. You've got people who are helping you.
Yeah.
And sometimes that scrappiness, right, is where you can really find innovation because you don't have the resources.
Absolutely. And as a creative person, I was feeling in a moment of my life that I need to break through independently and do my own story, create my own story, basically.
I love that. That is so important. And for any of you out there, it's never about the guarantee with a business. It's about the possibility. But even better than that, you get this opportunity, right, Adriana, to tap into parts of yourself you would never have uncovered or revealed during the process.
Yeah.
So let's go into, so now we know that's important for you and your creativity, because tech development and design and user experience is creativity, folks. It is about connection and creating the right vibe, etc. So I'd love it if you could share with us a few stories of product development that you did for startups, where there were, as we like to say, stiletto strapping. We're not just into bootstrapping here. And, without a team of, people on payroll versus the large corporate product development. Share some of those stories with us, Adriana.
Yeah, I think the large corporations, when we create new products, as you had mentioned before, because there is so much abundance in resources and people and not time, but there are abundance of resources. We lack innovation. And and I have worked in many products and projects in the past for big companies that never saw the light of the day after spending 6 months, a year, and a ton of money, right?
But what and why? Was it because senior management? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, because stakeholders approved that product or project without really validating the idea, validating the hypothesis. And that's something I really try to reinforce, which is, we will be talking about more later, product strategy and your hypothesis and validating those early on. Even though you are in a big company with all this budget, there needs to be a phase where you need to list those business goals and those hypotheses and have a plan to test those, right, before you go ahead and spend, $1 million on a new product.
Sure. And I know for a bigger company, they actually go through all of those steps, right, to make sure, and they bring in the focus groups and they test it out. But I gotta tell you, that must be disheartening when all that time and energy.
Absolutely. There are there's no mistake that they have a lot of research. But I also think that a lot of the times there is usability research that it's done. There are so many different types of research that can be done. But the one's research that I think it needs to be more reinforced is the value of the product, what value the product's bringing to the market and to your existing customers.
Right.
And go ahead.
Oh, no, just saying. So that experience, it was worth it to the company to invest all that money, the larger company that has a budget, to invest in whether or not it was going to be a fit. It was somebody's idea. Everybody worked on the team. Let's go. But nope, we're not going to pull the lever on this baby because we're not getting the feedback from the customers.
So I had working in companies where we had big research teams, and I had worked on companies that we didn't have a lot of research team, a lot of researchers. And in some of those experiences, for example, a company was very successful with a B2C product. Their consumer product was fantastic, but then they want to move into B2B. And just because they have the resources, then they're very successful on the consumer side. They believe they can go right straight ahead and be successful as well with the customer, the B2B products. So those are some of the stories that I remember have experienced in the past. But as for early stage startup, idea stage startup with no team or very little money, I think some of the challenges is that people have the tendency to go straight to develop this MVP with the right technology, hiring engineers right away. If the founders are not engineers themselves, that's the first thing they have in their mind. We need to hire engineers. And that's not always true, right?
Why isn't that always true?
Because if you're just starting, you need to understand your target audience, your target group, who you're creating this product for. And you need to understand the market, right? If there is a need in the market for the solution you have.
Love that advice. And you're absolutely right. I mean, I see it all the time. People are constantly looking for that right product dev team, and they haven't even figured out the beginning parts of the business. But did you see a success story of a startup taking off with, a really lean team and bring something to market?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. We have many successful stories, but unfortunately, we have most of them. I think we have more failed stories than successful stories overall.
Right. Exactly.
But it's in general. I had worked with companies with startups where sometimes they've been developing MVP for 2 years in a row without deploying, without launching anything, without doing any touch with potential customers or potential customers or consumers. It's very and it's cheap. Developing offshore is fairly cheap and expensive, even more nowadays.
That's right. And a lot of times too, founders who don't have the tech background don't understand what they should be looking for or the questions to ask or, what to be figuring out. And, it's complicated. Every business is complicated, folks. And, there's no real magic wand that says that this is all going to work out great. You do the best you can with your idea, but you cannot miss the step where you connect with potential customers to get their feedback, as harsh as it may be.
Yes.
Right.
And then when it comes to fearless product strategy, right?
Right.
And
right.
Listening to that feedback early on, but really listening and kind of putting your passion for your ideas a little bit to the side and having the strength to understand and the results you're getting with your research.
Yeah, and that's not easy again, and especially with product design and creating the right user experience and all of the parts and pieces. But I'm going to bring up this image here because you talk a lot about the product strategy framework. And I'd love to know a little bit more about this. What does this mean? I love the images.
Sure.
And I love that we have the pivot up there.
Yeah.
But, share with us. Let's see if I can do this with it. Nope,
Yeah.
I can't. Okay, so I'm just trying to make this work, folks. Hang in there. But lost the brand. I tell you, Mercury retrograde is really showing up for me today. I have to blame somebody else. But let's talk a little bit about that, Adriana, because this is your sweet spot. So when a customer comes to you and says, look, I've got the next best thing, or a client comes to you and I really want to develop this app and I'm trying to line up this dev team and said, how do you begin working with them? Or, existing companies who are adding a new product to their lineup, where do you start? Where do you begin in the process?
Yeah, if it's idea stage company, startup, like develop something really brand new for the first time, it's really, as I had mentioned before, it's going back to the basics. The target group, who is your demographic, the psychographic groups, what are their profiles? A lot of the times people might think that my product will be serving everyone. It's for everyone. No, it's never for everyone. You should always be narrowing down whom are you targeting, mainly at the beginning, mainly on the first months, first years, because you want to build attraction with the right target audience and make sure you're targeting the right audience, right? Because maybe your product might be to slightly different audience group, and understanding your market, understanding your competitors, your direct competitors, your indirect competitors, and yes, there will always be competitors no matter what you're creating. Even if email or paper or notebook is your competitor, there is a competitor. So understanding if that market you're getting into, it's a red ocean or a blue ocean, right? There is that book that talks a little bit about this, how big it is, how many competitors, if it's oversaturated, if you're the first one, or there's only a few that maybe had started 10 years ago. So that's where I like to start, is going back to understand those basic understandings.
I have several questions. But first I'll say hi. Hi, Leo. Thanks for tuning in. And yes, Theodore, I think it was Melissa. No, it might have been Jackie Ruby, who was on the show, who said, we must be calling it stiletto strap aid. I loved that. And you are very welcome, Nellie, waving to you and your precious treasure there. Aw, so sweet. And yeah, that was a really cool graphic. I'll be putting it up several times. And I know Adriana would be happy to share it with folks if you shoot her an email.
Yes.
Could you please define what an indirect competitor is?
When Airbnb first launched, their competitor was Craigslist, right?
Yes.
It's not a direct competitor, it's an indirect competitor, because Craigslist serves a bunch of different target groups. So that's what an indirect competitor is. But today, of course, Airbnb has a lot of direct competitors that is offering exactly the same solution.
So it's someone who's kind of like in a parallel universe with you. So you're not, competing necessarily for the same, but they're in your industry and competing with you. Okay, I don't know where I've been, MBA and all these years. I've never really heard, the indirect. So I love that term. Thank you for educating me. Anybody else? Thumbs up? Yeah. And also, what's this Blue Red Ocean book thing?
I will quickly look into the name of the author, but I think it came out probably 5-10 years ago, and it's something that goes they're from
I'm going to look it up now too.
Yeah.
So it's Blue Ocean versus Red Ocean
The name of
strategy.
the book is Blue Ocean.
Okay.
Yeah, it talks about exactly this, about having understanding how saturated the market is that you're getting into, but also and have so understanding the product, the weaknesses and the strengths, and how valuable and unique your product can be compared to theirs, but at the same time not being so much focused on your competitors. It's like you understand what it is and move forward.
I just put it into the comment threads for those of you who are watching live, and it is called Blue Ocean Strategy: How to Create Uncontested Market Space and Make the Competition Irrelevant. Why, I never. Wow. But of course, that's what branding is, right? And this is what it sounds like for you with how you're working with clients, is that initially you're getting them involved in what's really important, which is that brand promise, that connection, that communication of your product before you even get it designed, so that you're always on track to meet that promise. Yeah. Does that sound, did I get that right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I will apologize if anyone understands more about the Blue Ocean. I read many years ago. But yeah, I'm not.
I just thought it was great. I'd never heard it before, and I'm glad it's on our radar now. And I'll put it into the link into the show notes as well, folks who are tuning in. So then, I imagine that depending whether it's an SMB or a startup, what their budget is, where do you go next with your client? How do you help them go to the next step?
Yeah, so if you go back to that graphic, right, we start with the discovery, the research, where you are discovering and researching what we just talked about, and then you move into strategy. And on strategy, you'll be defining your product vision, which is your leap of faith. It's your 3, 5, 10 years plan, is where you want this idea, this product, or this company be in that time frame.
I love that. That's your leap of faith.
Leap of faith. Yeah, it is a leap of faith because there is no proof yet that can be manifested. You define your product strategy. You define your roadmap. But nowadays they talk more about, in product management, they talk more about OKRs, objective key results, right? Comes from Google, and it's a more flexible way of keeping everyone aligned into the direction the company is going the upcoming few months.
That's right. That's wonderful. And that, again, helps the messaging, the communication, touch points along the way with consumers, clients, etc. So I have never developed a product. So in my mind, I'm thinking you need to sort of draw things out. You need to understand your MVP. I imagine you can create an MVP, minimum viable product, everybody, without spending a lot of money. That's my understanding. Of course, I just so old-fashioned. I want to get out my pen and paper and draw things up. How does that part work when you get to? Let me just click on the thing.
Okay.
Now you've got the strategy. You know how you're going to, be moving this forward. Now it's build time. Yeah.
Before I continue talking about this strategy, let me just clarify something about this graphic. The folks that are here with us and are aware of the Lean Startup and the feedback loop can see the feedback loop within this diagram, right? It's the build, measure, and learn. The build, measure, and learn is part of the feedback loop. What I just did was taking a few steps back and making sure that we remind ourselves that the importance of having the discovery and research phase and the importance of having the strategy phase. Because in my experience, that's what I have seen. At the moment, someone has an idea to start a startup or to launch a new product in the market, they go straight into building, right? No, you need to have some research and strategy done before you get into the build, measure, and learn feedback loop. And so another very important point during the strategy is listing your assumptions and your hypotheses. What are the value that you believe this new product will bring to the market, right?
Right.
And this hypothesis validation, it's so important, that
Like how long should the assumption list be? I mean, do you throw down 2 or 3, or do you want to keep going deeper and deeper and deeper so that you have a good list?
the way I usually do, and I actually had created a template for it, which I will be sharing towards the end with everyone. You start listing those assumptions and hypotheses, right? Assumptions and then hypotheses. And you just start listing them, because you need to go through that exercise with your co-founder, with maybe the team members you have with you. And then you prioritize them. You see which one it's the key to validate, which experiment format you will be using, which we will be talking about a little bit as well. Like before you actually start building an MVP, hiring engineers and writing code, like what can you do before that to validate those hypotheses,
Right, and it gives you a chance, folks, before you spend a whole lot of money to find out if these are the right engineers you want to work with. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And if it's the right, if it's the right tech stack, right? The technology you're selecting to use, if it's the right product, if it's the right solution, actually.
Right. And so you just don't want to jump right from, I got this great idea, to boom.
Yeah. And there is also business model, right? You can create assumptions around the business model, which a lot of the times the business model by itself can dictate the success or not of the first MVP.
What do you mean by that?
I mean that sometimes the same solution can be offered in different ways, right? It can be a subscription-based business model. It can be advertisement-based. It can be an affiliate program. Many different ways of creating a business model around.
Right. And folks, this is, and when Adriana is talking about business model, she's talking about how are you going to get paid for this and will you make money? Yeah. So it's one thing to say, I've got all this great revenue coming in, but if most of it is headed back out and you don't have anything left over, you're not profitable and therefore you're not sustainable. Exactly. So, understanding the price points and your assumptions that people not only want this product, they're going to switch from a favorite to use yours. These are all the assumptions that you have to prove, the hypothesis you have to prove, but will they be willing to pay this price? And if you decide in your business model, you are going to need a certain price for your product, then you've got to develop the product in a way for a certain type of people who are going to be able to afford that, I imagine.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And sometimes I have seen that so many times, right? The company first launched the product with a business model that it's like monthly subscription, a B2C kind of product. But then they realized that it would be better if it's more like a B2B. It's the same solution, but it's for a B2B market with a yearly subscription, right? And then all of a sudden it becomes successful.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, when you'll see them, of course, in the big platforms, they go from your monthly and all of a sudden the next thing you know, you have to pay it annually. And that's great for them, but they didn't check with me first on that. But I wasn't part of their focus group. So now we have said, okay, we're feeling really confident. And again, we don't know the founder's typical runway, right? They only have so much cash flow. So maybe you're jamming on these questions quickly. Like what's the usual time frame for this discovery and strategy section?
It depends on the product and on the market, I would say. But I'd say, like, if I would guess or estimate a good amount, I would say 3 months to 6 months for the discovery and strategy. I think it's very reasonable of a founder working full time on it.
Wonderful. And that's a good point right there, good for our side hustlers.
Yeah. On my first startup, I was full time from the beginning, but my co-founder and CTO was working on the weekends.
Got it.
It's hard.
It's so hard.
Very, very hard. He was wonderful, extremely smart, and we had a wonderful experience together. But it's very challenging, and mainly if you have family and you need, have a full-time job.
Oh, and if there's a pandemic and all your care givers are unavailable.
Yeah. And if you are in that situation, if you are working full time and you want to start this new idea, get going and do the weekends, but have that in mind that it might take a little longer for you to do it properly, instead of just rushing hiring engineers to get building and developing so quickly.
Oh yeah, and folks, and sure, you see the companies pivot and pivot and pivot once they launch, but it really, if you can avoid a couple of pivots and nail it as best you can until the launch, which, then your customers are going to give you even more feedback. So let's go to the next stage, which is build.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you're constantly learning, you're asking all these great questions as you go along.
Yeah.
What does build mean?
Before I get to build, there is, I think, is still a small piece on the strategy that I'd like to clarify, which is to define which type of experiments you could be running before you start building those experiments. Build, I think it could also be called create, actually, because build implies actually building and writing code. So we're thinking in changing build to create. But the experiments you could be creating could include things like creating a video, for example. I think Dropbox did that. As soon as they launched, or right before they launched, Dropbox, in order to test their ideas, they created a promotional video explaining what Dropbox was about. And they got over 75,000 signups because of that video. Right?
I have goosebumps.
Video. Pardon? Yeah.
Goosebumps.
Yeah, it's just a video, and mainly like something that people are not used to, was something new. I think they are 10 years old now, right? New concept for people to understand. So it's a video.
Like and folks, I know a great group who does explainer videos for maybe $700. That's really not much to, put together to get.
Yeah, they did a video on their, I think they had a prototype. I'm not sure if it was a functional, a fake prototype, but they did explaining how the files would be shared and so on. So you can do something like that. If it's a B2B, you can create a sales pitch deck and go sell to your potential customers and get letter of intents, right? If you get 10, 20 letter of intents before you get started and even get payment, there's nothing better than that.
Oh my gosh, Adriana, I'm so glad we didn't skip this before we went on to build/create.
Right? Yeah.
Audacious experiments can save you so much time, but also build rapport with potential customers and clients.
Absolutely. And and those early power users, as they're called sometimes in UX, they're so important for the early stage, first months of your company.
Right. I imagine they become
feedback. Yeah.
I imagine they become brand ambassadors.
Exactly. Absolutely.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Hey, Barbara, so happy to see you here. It is fascinating. As you can see, I'm like curious minds want to know. I keep diving deeper and asking. So I'm right there with you. I'm loving this. And yes, Anne, it is amazing. This is really, it doesn't have to be that complicated.
Yeah.
And it can, and again, thanks too for this, Anne. Absolutely. These are really good tips that don't cost money and will save you tons of money and time while building great relationships before you spend the real dough, right? And make the real investment.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there are many other ways you can do. There are several different tricks and experiments you can do before you can. It's just, we don't know what we don't know when we first get started as founders. And I think that's a challenge. It's very overwhelming.
This would be a great point to make at this time in our conversation. What is the number one reason startups fail?
Yes, the number one reason is there is no market need for the products we create. 42% of the time, there is no market need.
42%, folks. So that's why it's so important to nail these things down ahead of time, prove your hypothesis, really go deep on the assumptions, do the fun explainer video or the sales pitch deck to folks and present it and work some of those things out, because you may have a great idea, but if you don't do the initial stuff in hard work, so to speak, You could save yourself time and a tons of money. Hey, Dr. Alan Chong, so good to see you. Haven't seen you in a while. Thanks for saying hi. I'm so grateful. So grateful for you tuning in. So now we're ready to build. All right, let me just bring this back up. All right, we've had
okay, let's build. Let's get going.
Now we're ready to build.
Yeah, I think the trick about building, and if there are any engineers here listening, you are familiar with that. But first-time founders who are not engineers might not know, which is the alpha, beta phases. So when you are building your first MVP, the actual product, you're writing code and so on, you might want to do an alpha test, as they call, which is basically you launch that product with your team, let your advisors take a look and give you feedback. Then you go through the loop, right? You learn, you measure, and you learn. And then when you go to that loop again, for the second time, you do a beta test. Maybe you launch the product, their app, with 100 users. You might be inviting the users that you would have interviewed early on during your customer discovery, which you didn't talk a lot about here, but it's a very important phase we kind of mentioned. So launch that product with a small closed group, maybe family and friends, and then go through that feedback loop again. So if you go through that feedback loop at least 2 times, 3 times before you actually do the full release in the market, chances are you will be more successful because you'll be able to improve some problems or some usability problems, or might be some bugs, technical bugs that you might have in the product. You will be, it's a wonderful.
Oh, yeah. And your customers are going to be the first to say, hello, that didn't work or this didn't work. And so it's great and it's free, basically. I mean, they're giving
it's
you
just a matter of time and setting things the way it should be.
So important. Yes. Hey, Mike. Oh, my gosh. Mike Henley. Hi. Oh, artist extraordinaire, just saying. Do your research. Yes. Agree. 100%. Thanks for swinging by, Mike. So now we're in the build. And can you just give everybody just a little bit of a primer as far as how to find that dev team, that engineering team that's going to help you? Because I got to think it's like dating, for crying out loud. I mean, this is somebody you're going to be working with for a while. And I have that question, but also what happens if the team is not working out? They're not on the same page. They're not delivering. So if you could talk a little bit about that, Adriana, that would be great.
Yeah, I have an interesting story. The first team I built, it did not work out, unfortunately. I remember I had a backend person who didn't want to sign any contract. I was like, that's a little strange. My first CTO wasn't. We had an agreement to launch our pilot. We had a time frame, and things weren't moving forward. So I ended up finding a second team, finding another CTO who became a co-founder later. I found a wonderful back-end engineer and front-end developer for the mobile app. My startup was a B2B2C, so it was very challenging. I was building a consumer and a customer product at the same time.
And I know, founders, you're out there, you know what that's like, because even though you might be doing B2B, you know that there's a consumer on the end that you need to make happy as well to make your B2B customer happy.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's totally right.
And that's not easy. Oh
yeah.
My God.
So I think the building your team, a lot of times people struggle with, do I hire a vendor, right? An outside offshore or here a dev team, dev shop, or do I build my own team?
Yeah.
I think overall, from my experience, investors prefer that you're using you're building your own team, right? Yeah. You at least have a CTO working with you hand by hand. As a founder or your primary person.
Where they have stake in the game, folks. It's really important because of the delivery. And look, there are some great dev shops out there. hands down, phenomenal.
Absolutely.
That's their, business model to serve you, and they come through and they've got the track record.
Yeah.
But, at the same time, if you can bring someone in-house who is just, you've done your job as a founder, you've gotten them in because they believe in your vision and they believe in the possibility of this product, to get them on board, give them some equity stake, get them, in-house, so to speak, even if they're working another job.
Yeah.
You can do it. And it really looks great on your pitch deck to have that person as the CTO on your team.
Exactly.
Investors.
Absolutely. And the other thing is, it's know your weaknesses, right? Because maybe if you're a salesperson, you're a designer, you will need this CTO. But if you're an engineer and if you're building a B2B, make sure you have a salesperson in your team, right? It all depends on where you're coming from and what your background is and your weaknesses.
I think it's easier to outsource a good marketing team, frankly, than it is the tech team. I think the tech team, it's a personal commitment to get that done. I think marketing folks, when I think of Vicki O'Neill or some of the folks that I have worked with or had here on the show, everybody, they really know how to help tech companies deliver. Or you can buy the folks who are experts at Facebook advertising, Google advertising, online digital advertising. That is okay to have a 1099 or an outsource with a freelancer or a company. But boy, I just think that tech component, because you've got to pivot, you've got to have that flexibility, right, Adriana? So that as you're getting the feedback from the alpha, then the beta groups, and now people are onboarding, and then you launch. And then you find out a whole nother slew of changes that you're going to need, right?
Yeah,
it becomes very interesting.
Yeah. While we agree on hiring your team, I've seen it's like there is both sides for everything in life, right? I've seen startups that maybe they hired a vendor to develop the first iteration of MVP. Right? Maybe I think this startup I'm particularly thinking, they launched a web app. They hired a vendor to do a web app and to prove, to reach product market fit, basically, or to believe they were getting close to the product market fit. Yep. And then once they raised a series round, I think a pre-seed round, they believe they start getting closer to the product market fit. Then they start hiring engineers and building their own team because they're getting ready to really go further into fundraising.
Yeah. And this is what's great about your framework here. This is all about product market fit right here. Mm-hmm. Every step of the way is to get it fine-tuned, so that when you launch,
exactly,
you are in the sweet spot. So we've built, and oh my gosh, I love that space rocket headed off. What's that? Is that for launching?
Is that for launching? Yeah, absolutely. You build, you launch. I was trying to be very concise when I was creating this diagram. So you build, you launch, you measure, you learn. And then depending on what stage you're at in this feedback loop, you pivot, make sure to read the results of those numbers with an open mind and an open heart. And if you pivot, things will be fine, right? Don't get stuck with your own ideas and blind. Or you might need to go back into research and change your strategy.
That's right, because customers in the alpha and beta stage, everybody can say, "Oh yes, this is great. I'm going to take this action step as soon as you launch," and then you launch, and they don't do anything that they said they were going to do, and why? That's when you have to go why, and you can learn something really valuable. And the next thing you know, you've got a product that's even better because you listen to your customer, and that's what you're constantly emphasizing here, and that's what the measurement part is, right? Is listening. Talk a little bit about what the data tells us.
Yes, absolutely. It's another very important aspect, right? It's setting up your key performance indicators, your KPIs early on, trying to define which are the most important ones or the most important one you want to measure right away. And and always work and go through those loops, those feedback loops, and which they are basically the sprints you would be going through in product development. Always working towards those metrics, right? What are you trying to improve? Customer acquisition? Are you trying to improve engagement? Are you trying to improve revenue, right? So every strategy in product should really be done towards those metrics.
Right. And that measurement right here, and again, the loop that we see right here, learn, build, take off, measure, that data part of your job, right? Listening to what the numbers are telling you versus what you want to see. You got to take off.
Yeah, and that's why it's. I think everyone recommends to have a co-founder, right? It's so important to have a co-founder, someone that has the same interest. It's right there with you to be able to discuss those results and have honest decisions and discussions about those results.
Right. And so where does fine tuning come into all of this? As you know, because that word pivot is right there all the time.
Yes, fine tuning. I think it's the going back to the discovery and the strategy, right? Maybe it's like finding, doing small tweaks in your product, in your business model, for example, or doing small tweaks in the tech stack you're using, right? Maybe what you're using, the solution, the technology you're using might not be the best one. Maybe you need to go in a different direction. It's an endless process, and
right. And when you're working.
challenges.
And when you're working with your sales team, they're going to give you great information. So that in your marketing team that, hey, we're getting this feedback with these numbers. I think we need to tweak in this area to meet this consumer need. And I like what Mike Henley said here. As a manager of a development team, the biggest issue is that developers may build a solution for an imaginary customer or themselves versus the intent.
Yeah.
Mike? Absolutely. Plenty of examples that we've seen out there around that.
But one thing I'd like to mention is the importance of having a product manager in your group, or having understanding of product management.
So we'll define product management as you see it.
Yeah, it's basically the CEO. The CEO plays a lot of the times the role of the product management, the product manager in the company. The only problem is that the CEO is the one that is also doing fundraising, and is right, and which takes a lot of time when you are going through your rounds of funding. But it's having an understanding of the business, the market, the target audience, the target group, and the technology,
and the ability to drive results,
and the ability to drive results, and having that the vision, the OKR, and having this high level view of where the product, the business is at on that diagram, right? Are you doing discovery? What's the strategy? How many times have you been through the feedback loop? Is it time to pivot? Is it time to keep experimenting and improving? Yeah, product management, it's extremely important. And again, I think it's very, a lot of people confuse with project management.
Yes.
Right? Project management, it's that person that is literally making sure the features and the backlog you have is done, and it's going through the pipeline, and it's being released in the market. That's the role of the project manager. It's working with the engineers on a daily basis, making things move forward. But the role of our product manager, it's the more high level view of making sure what is being launched is giving us the metrics and the results we're looking for, is aligning with what marketing is doing, because what marketing does might affect the results. So we need to understand, right? A lot of the times to improve some metric, we don't need to do anything on the product technical, technology-wise talking. You can launch a new marketing campaign, and that might change the results. So that's the role of a product manager.
Thank you for explaining that difference, because that is key. Project versus product management, folks. Amazing. And I put OKR into the comment section, and as well, I'll put into the show notes, because that's an acronym again, kind of like the LTV CAC ratio. It's, what are your OKRs? Now, yeah, if you've been working in certain corporate environments, objectives and key results is really well known as like KPIs. And all, but it's still, these acronyms, we're all learning. We're all new.
It's a process. It's a process.
Yes. KPI, key
performance indicators.
Yeah, these are real important so that you know. And those of you who have been, reviewed for salary increases or your annual review, of course, you're probably very familiar with KPIs. But same with MVP, most valuable player. No, minimum valuable product. So I just want to refresh everybody's memories, because, there's so much to take in as a founder, and you may not have been exposed to any of this. And this is all, we're all learning together, and we're all refreshing our memories together. Let's bring up this other wonderful slide that you have here, which goes back to the hypothesis validation template. Talk about this, Adriana.
Yeah, so I created this template, and I will be soon creating a checklist. There is a checklist right at the bottom, but I'm planning to extrapolate a little further. It's that exercise we've mentioned early on that we should all be going through when you're creating a new product. Listing those hypotheses, right. Trying to prioritize them, listing which experiment can be done to validate the hypothesis, because an experiment can be very cheap, right? It can take you like a day or two. Maybe you create a pre-launch waiting list page, and you launch that page, and you start building that waiting list. That might be an experiment, and that is fairly easy to do nowadays. Right. And understand which results you expect from those experiments. So it's just organizing a bit more those.
So you can scan that QR code, folks, and it'll take you right to the wonderful download, right?
Yes.
I'm going to bring this back up again. De-risk your ideas.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Yeah. Yes. That's basically what it is, right? It's trying to de-risk early on those hypotheses.
Yeah. Adriana, I got to say, one thing that has impressed me from the day I met you virtually is that I just love seeing a woman fully in her authenticity talking about product dev and UX. It's not that there aren't a lot of women in tech. I mean, there could be many more, but it's so great to see you and having such an important voice, and just be really helping companies out, and the incredible experience and the depths that you bring, and especially for the most important stage of product development, which is this beginning stage, when you're nurturing this idea and you're doing the discovery and you're de-risking and you're doing, proving your hypothesis. It will help you scrap this idea, a little cold water on the face. Drinking. Or let you go.
Oh, that's wonderful. It's been a pleasure as well, Ande. It was very
so great.
Lovely.
But let's go move into one of my favorite parts of the show, which is founder journey advice. I have to tell you, folks, if you're a first-time founder just starting out, you're not alone with anything you're going through. What advice do you have for founders, now that you've been out and doing this several times already, to help them when they're lying awake at night and they're feeling inadequate, or they're feeling like they have imposter syndrome? What have you learned along? And by the way, all founders feel this way. It's just part of the journey. Some will tell you they've been feeling that way for decades, no matter what, how many successful exits. It's part of it. How has the founder journey been for you? How has it served you? And what advice do you have for other founders?
Whenever I would doubt myself if I was in the right position, if I had what it takes to do this. I would I love connecting with people. I really thrive through connections and through talks. And so I would reach to my advisors, to my team, and have open conversations about it. So that's one thing. It's, are we in the right direction? Are we doing the right thing? Is this the next step to take? And the second thing, which I've started doing a little bit more lately, it's meditation. I think meditation is something that I've been hearing over and over for years and years, and in startup and business community as well. Mm-hmm. But it's really like this past year or so, I learned how to do some unique meditations, and it really clears your mind and opens yourself to have a clear perspective and view on what it's happening in your product, in your business, and really help you with decisions and have a perspective on yourself, right? Self-understanding.
Love that advice, something fierce, because again, you don't know who's watching right now. That can serve somebody because it worked for you. And this is why I ask it all the time, is because we want to make this journey easier for you founders. Sometimes, taking some deep breaths, tapping into your knowing, calming your mind down will help you remove yourself from feeling like this is a personal journey. So, yeah, I mean, there is a lot of personal stuff, but if you can take your business and sort of keep it out here, especially during stressful times, and then you can be an observer and answers will come to you.
Yes. And a lot of the times it's yourself without yourselves. And one of the greatest ways, and I think a lot of people have been talking a lot about it, mainly because we are still living this pandemic. A lot of us we are working from home and with everyone at home. It's exercising, right? Yeah. Make sure to exercise every morning. It makes a huge difference in how you go throughout your day.
Dance to some of your favorite music, folks, because that just jazzes you up and it can get you excited and again get the oxygen.
Exactly. Walk in nature, go for a walk on the street.
It's so good. How may we serve you? The Startup Life community loves to cheer on other founders and support other founders. How can folks support you and your beautiful business?
Make sure to connect with me. As I said, I love meeting people. And mainly these days, I don't mind the Zoom calls. I know a lot of people are tired of Zoom. Please be sure to connect with me on LinkedIn, Instagram, on my website. Yeah, if you scan this QR code, to take you straight to get this template. And I will be starting a mastermind group. I currently have one mastermind group. I will be starting hopefully soon another one for founders to be discussing product management, product strategy, product
design. Great idea.
Yeah, the idea is to keep it small. And
what does small look like?
Pardon?
What does small? Like 5, 20, 50?
The idea is to be maybe 20 to 30 per session, but only 3, maybe 4 will be bringing their own topics or questions around product management and product strategy. So I will be there. I will be inviting guests, developers, other entrepreneurs with experience in startups to help answer those questions. But the mastermind is really about as well hearing other founders' experiences and how they solve those problems.
I love that because you can really learn a lot when you do a mind share with folks and find out how they're solving a problem. Plus, they get your wonderful wisdom along the way to help them really see possibilities and opportunities and how to do a better job.
Absolutely. Yeah. So stay tuned.
It's all about upping your game. Thank you so much, Adriana, for joining me.
Thank you, Ande. It was wonderful. It was such a pleasure. Thank you so very much from the deep of my heart to open your house, your beautiful office. From the first time I met you, I was completely in love with your paintings, your red wall, and how everything is set
Everybody.
up. It's really,
Thank you.
nowadays that we are at home all the time, it really brings, it's
Wow.
incredible to
I
see.
I popped in Adriana's, her website or LinkedIn, all the links, of course, in the live comment section, but also in the show notes. So I really encourage all of you to reach out and connect, especially if you're building a business. Thank you again for joining me and for bringing such wisdom to the Startup Life live show. Great to share your information. And again, I'm in awe and wonder of what you're doing in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I see you around.
Okay,
Bye.
so I got to tell you, founders, thank you so much for tuning in and for upping your founder game while cheering on a fellow founder. I'm very grateful for your time. And for those of you who are watching the replay, be sure to click be sure to click the subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. And also, founders, you do not need to be struggling alone. I'm going to bring up this information here. This is how I can work with you. Pitch deck reviews. That's my sweet spot. I've raised millions, VC money, thousands of angel money, and I know what investors are looking for. We can do a 2-hour strategy session for a funding session, on-demand coaching, and of course the WeBank application. And on-demand coaching means you just call me and you ask a question, and I charge by the minute. Easy breezy. So be sure to connect with me, and you can schedule a 15-minute free conversation right here. And we can find out and kick the tires and see if we're a good fit for each other. I want to tell you about what's happening next week. This Friday, the 23rd. What a wild ride it's been today. Let me bring up who we have on, because this is a fascinating founder story. It's Christina Key, and she's sharing lessons learned from launching a hedge fund, which, by the way, she did from her dorm room in 2012. And today it trades at up to $7 billion. I mean, who launches a hedge fund? It's amazing. And you'll also love how she is serving the world today with a brand new startup that's for all walks of life in the financial world. So it's a great story. She does a wonderful job sharing her interesting challenges and startup stories from launching a high frequency trading hedge fund. Until then, I can't wait to see you on the other side the next time. Please stay focused, stay strong, and remember, you've got this. Cheers, everyone.